Hi, I'm Madeline James, and today I wanted to talk about enthronement ceremonies. In fantasies or historical fiction in general, you tend to see these ascensions, enthronements, coronations of rulers come up quite a bit. In my blood magic project, which I am in the middle of revisions right now, I came across my own coronation, and I realized it was kind of glossed over, very bland, and it didn't really take advantage of, what's possible with that sort of an event. An enthronement ceremony is a really great opportunity to learn a lot about the world that you're building, about the society as a whole, about the values that the people have and the role that the ruler has. I did a lot of research and readings on enthronement ceremonies throughout history and around the world in order to incorporate some of these ideas and inspirations and really show off some of my worlds and society in my manuscript. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of show you guys what I learned. Before we get started, if you like videos like this or want me to do more of them, definitely give it a like below. This will tell me to make more of them and really helps. Here's a non-exhaustive list of some of the things that could be good to think about before starting to design your own enthronement ceremony. The first is the cultural and societal principles or values for your people. These are things that they value above other traits like power, wealth, magic, strength, military might, humility, morality, purity, that sort of a thing. What is your ruler supposed to personify? Is it purity? Is it godliness? Is it intelligence? Is it military strength? This could be similar to the societal general values and principles, but it could be more specific for the ruler in your world. If you have a religion in your world, how does the ruler relate to that? Are they a religious figure themselves? Are they an agent of God? Are they a god themselves? Are they a figure within the religion? How were they selected to rule? Were they elected? Were they chosen by some trial or conquest of sorts? Did they just take over? Were they born with the right to rule? How extravagant and how much money would probably be put into this kind of event? If your people value power and wealth, then that's going to be showed a lot more in this sort of ceremony. If they value humility, purity, some form of religious devotion, you might see something that's simpler, understated, less extravagant. Do the people care about their ruler? Is this someone that, it tends to be a very popular figure, someone that's fairly present in their daily lives and in ruling their daily lives? Or is it someone that is very disconnected from the people, is sort of a mystery themselves? So if you have enough, world building done to sort of answer those kinds of questions, then you're probably prepared to come up with an enthronement ceremony that really showcases your world and the society that they live in without having to be too info dumpy. My main resource for this research, I'm going to make sure I don't get this wrong, so I'm going to read it off, was a chapter out of Temples of the Ancient World, a collection of short pieces about ritual and symbolism, which was edited by Donald Perry, and the specific chapter was chapter 10, and that is King, Coronation, and Temple, Enthronement Ceremonies in History by Stephen D. Ricks and John Sroka. Their research discusses some of the more common elements of enthronement ceremonies and shows, examples of these throughout history and through different cultures. So I'm going to be pulling from a lot of those elements and adding in a few of my own and putting more of a fantastical element on some of them, just to really show what all these different elements could be and how they could show things about your world or your society. If you find these interesting and want to learn more about these specific elements, especially the ones that are in that research and, examples of them, there's a lot of examples in that chapter. I will include the link to the text below, and for the rest of the video, when I talk about the text, that is the chapter that I'm talking about. I do also want to clarify, just a disclaimer, that I am not an anthropologist, I am not a historian, I am not a sociologist, I am none of those things. I'm not a published fantasy author yet. This is just research that I've done for my own book, and I thought it would be fun to share. So keep that in mind. The first category of elements is going to be when and where the enthronement ceremony takes place. These can say a lot, especially about what's important to the people when it comes to places and time. The first one is sacred places. If your ruler is associated with a religion or belongs to a religion, it could make sense to have the ceremony in some place that holds some sort of religious importance, or even if there is no religion involved in your story, there could be some place that's sacred in another way. Like if you have a magical world, maybe there's some place that's significant for, where magic came from, or some important place that some magical event took place that maybe your capital or your city is based around, or somewhere that they go on pilgrimages to. Element 2 is secrecy. So if your ruler is being sort of initiated into some knowledge or order or, religious position, then this entire ceremony might be completely in secret to keep a sort of air of mystery, of unknown, of otherness about it. And this could tie into if, you have more of a exclusive feel about this, where only, certain people get to go. The third element is timing. If there is a specific time of day, time of month, time of year, it could make sense to have an enthronement ceremony sort of based at that time. There's a quote from the text about this when talking about seeing this throughout history, and it says, "The time of the king's coronation was frequently associated with the creation of the world." And that was page 248. So if, your people get, say, their magic from the moon, it could make sense to have, a specific moon phase during the enthronement ceremony. You can also consider the history of their people. Was there a special event that occurred that every year they celebrate, and if they can, maybe they have enthronement ceremonies around that time? Is there a sacred day of the week where this might happen? A day, sunset, sunrise, just something like that that means something to your people. I wouldn't necessarily create something like this if it's not already part of your world building, but if it is, it could be a really good way to showcase that. So the next section of elements is about transitions. If your ruler from going, from an heir or whatever they were before becoming a ruler to becoming a ruler involves some sort of transition of becoming someone or something else, then these are elements that you might want to pull from. The first element is ablutions, and this is described in the text as ceremonial washings that were believed to avert evil, give life and strength, and symbolize rebirth. And this could be, to purify them, to impart blessings, to wash away their old life. So if they're going from, maybe being a peasant to being this ruler, maybe they want to wash away everything that happened before so that they can be something new. Anointing, I struggled to find a good example of this that wasn't just strictly religious, but it's basically applying oil or something on the body as a way to sort of mark them for something or someone. So in, Christianity, you mark with the oil, or Catholicism, I don't know, but you mark them with oil to kind of represent that they are of God. So this is something that could really be played into in a fantasy world where, say, magic is something significant, or there's different sects of, magic or houses or something like that, where you have these strict organizations that the ruler belongs to or is kind of ruling in the name of. So this is actually something that I'm using in these enthronement ceremony in my book, where they are being anointed with the blood of certain magical people. And it kind of symbolizes this oath that they have to them and to people, and the significance of what having that blood means. The next element is a new name. So there's actually a surprising number of civilizations that seem to give a new name or an additional name to their rulers. And this again signified this change from who you were before and who you are as a ruler. There's a couple examples in the text that I really liked. During the Middle Kingdom, the Egyptian king, who had no less than 5 names in all, received one of these, the phrenomen, or throne name, at the time of his ascension. In Mesopotamia, the new name was given at the time of the king's accession, when the choice of the gods became effective in the world of men. That's 244 to 245. And I just really like the different ways that you could play with that in a fantasy world, especially like different sort of like titles and names. So the next one is, a bit more obvious, Rebirth. If the symbolism of this transition is that the ruler is being reborn in some manner, so maybe there is more of a significant transition there where they are letting the person they were before symbolically die and they are being born anew. And then the other kind of reason seems to be if they are becoming greater than. Like by becoming a ruler, they are taking a step up from becoming, maybe a normal person to becoming, maybe a god or goddess. Or maybe they're stepping up and becoming this chosen one or this magical entity. And there could even be a magical component in this maybe where your ruler is actually accepting like some new amount of magic or something is happening to them that's magical that changes them. And so this rebirth is that idea of just completely being new. The next section is roles and duties. So this is what is expected of the ruler once they, take their throne or crown or whatever. And what's expected of them and how significant are they going to be in the civilization. So the first one is ritual combat. So this could represent a battle or struggle between two forces and maybe the ruler's role in that. So maybe this could be to represent the ruler's duty in the struggle, could represent getting rid of, the side that's seen as more like the enemy force or the victory of the other. It could be more symbolic of a past battle that maybe the ruler is ruling and able to rule because of, this event that happened. The next one is austerities. And this means that if your ruler is expected to be very disciplined in maybe showing certain values or traits or just disciplined in general, and if the society values that, then perhaps before the enthronement ceremony there is a period of austerities where they are showing this discipline by maybe fasting or staying out in the cold or being in solitude, refraining from enjoyment, just something like that to kind of practice this discipline leading up to the ceremony. Promises then could be made by the ruler to kind of show what duty they have to their people, so they can make promises to maybe keep them safe, bring prosperity, more specific things. Maybe there's some force that they're defending the people against. And this could be a good way to show the role that is expected of the ruler. Then sacrifices, and these could be human sacrifices, animal sacrifices, other types of sacrifices. And, I would expect to see this in civilizations who have some sort of greater power, whether that's, a magical source, gods and goddesses, something else that they ask for things from, if that makes sense, right? So you sacrifice something for something else, for the goodwill of, a god or goddess, or in return for X or Y. So you're gonna probably see people needing something that they really, really want and need, and that's what they would sacrifice for. So if you have a society that has a lot of droughts, you might see them making a sacrifice for rain and plentiful harvest during the rule of the new ruler. They could be, if they're at the foot of a volcano, maybe they're asking for it to not erupt. If there are beasts or other magical creatures that exist in the realm, maybe there is a sacrifice to fend off these beasts or magical entities during the rule of the new ruler. There's a lot of options there. Any sort of society where there's a history of war and bloodshed, you might see them sacrificing for peace to hope that, that's something that happens in the rule. So the next one is officials. And this would be if there are kind of important figures that the ruler sort of elects or chooses to perform specific duties underneath of them, and this kind of gives a better idea of this distribution of power and responsibilities kind of close to your ruler. So selecting these officials could be part of the enthronement ceremony. The next section is the people. So the first element here, is a procession. So this is basically when the new ruler would travel around through their land, maybe to see different subjects, maybe just around a city or within a fortress. There's an example in the text of walking around the fortress walls. In a civilization where a ruler is more present in the daily lives of this people, this could make a lot of sense. Going around, showing them who their ruler is, having that personal connection with them for the people. And if, the way this is met and the way this is handled could be very different based off the role that a ruler has to their people. If the ruler is loved and cherished, then maybe it's more of a time of celebration where they have festivals wherever they go, they share food, or if it's a military ruler or one that rules in fear and maybe they're making a procession in order to instill that fear and show military strength and might so that people do not try to rise up. A ruler that is put in front of their people is a bit more real to them, has a little bit less of that air of mystery. So maybe this isn't going to happen if, you're aiming for a ruler that has more of that mystery, or maybe they'd be shrouded or something like that. The next elements are reverence and jubilations. So if the people are expected to kind of love and worship their ruler, regardless of whether they actually do, there could be expectations from the crowd of people that are watching the ceremony to show this reverence. Maybe they're quiet postures or, very strict forms or something that they do to show this reverence. Where maybe jubilations would be to celebrate the rule. Maybe there is something that, like a ritualistic saying that they do. And I think the example was, long live the queen. So the next element is humiliation. And this wasn't gone into too detail in the text, so I don't have a lot of real examples for this, but this is basically if the ruler is, made fun of, mocked, maybe things are done to them to humiliate them. Maybe a, ruler is walked around naked in front of their people, or just something to humiliate them. And I could think that from a world building perspective, this could be done for a few reasons. This could be to show that a ruler is not above their people, short of to keep them from having a high ego or thinking they are better than, like, you are a servant of the people or something like that. Maybe it's part of the transformation where they break down who they were before through this process of humiliation before, they turn into this new ruler of sorts. The next element is a feast. And if, this is again a celebration, a little bit more of a casual affair, then you could have a grand feast held in the honor of the new ruler or, as part of this ceremony. And, this could showcase who is being invited to this sort of a thing. Are regular people invited? Are there very specific people that are invited to the feast? I think that kind of shows who is really important to the ruler, who would be invited to that. If you only see the most important dignitaries and richest people and stuff like that, then, okay, those are probably going to have a bigger sway on the ruler and the, ruling class in general, versus if ordinary people get to go. Then the last element of this section is fealties. So there could be groups of people or individuals that swear fealty to the new ruler as they accept their throne to kind of cement their right to rule, or, treaties, or things like that. In a militaristic society, you might see maybe their top generals swearing fealty in something where maybe you have a lot of smaller countries or areas that kind of have their own individual rulers being ruled by one, I guess, overarching ruler, like an emperor or something. Maybe those individual rulers will swear fealty to the new overarching ruler. The last section, and the longest one, is elements of symbolism. The first element is garments. This is extremely popular. You could have, clothing, robes, mantles, something like that, that sort of represents the new position. It could just be symbolic, where perhaps, it's a costume representing something in history or someone in history. Colors that represent things, like maybe gold is for royalty, or white is for purity or something like that. The next one is a crown or a headdress or head covering of sorts. And this would be something that kind of marks the ruler, is part of them taking on this position, that they have this crown or headdress or whatever that signifies, you know, their position. And the look of this crown, how much jewels it has, how ornate it is, can say a lot about the people. Another thing to note is that if they are crowned, then it is a coronation. If they're not crowned, I don't think it counts as a coronation. Even if I think it's a different type of headdress, they wouldn't always call it a coronation, so be aware of that. The other thing about a crown is that it could be symbolic. Who is putting the crown on their head? Are they crowning themselves? Are they being crowned by, you know, a religious figure, a magical figure? If it's a family-based thing, maybe it is, you know, someone from their family or an ancestor. Maybe it is, you know, someone very young, to symbolize, you know, the innocence of youth or something like that. Like, there's a lot of options there, but who puts the crown on their head means something. The next one is a throne. This is similar to, you know, a crown, where it is an item that is symbolic of the ruler's authority and power. So they have this throne. Maybe they sit on it for the first time as part of this ceremony. They're like seated in their throne. Following that vein again is regalia. And so this is if there are like items or weapons or something like that that also signifies the power of the ruler. So these could be, you know, swords, keys, rings, what else do I have? Religious artifacts, a scepter, jewelry, just important symbols to culture and what they represent. The next one is communion. And this is food or water being, I guess, consumed in more of a symbolic or sacramental nature, where maybe the food or water symbolizes something else. The next one is tattoos or body art, whether or not that's permanent or temporary. And these could be things that, you know, again, symbolizes the person's right to rule, their authority and power. There can even be a magical aspect of this where, you know, the body art or tattooing is imbued with magic or something like that to sort of enhance the ruler's abilities. They could just be symbolic of values or things in history that matter to the society or the ruler personally. And it could just be a mark of the ruler. The next element is the impersonation of important figures. So this could be through acting, through impersonating of these figures that are important to the ruler, important to the society. And this could be done with costumes, with masks, with general acting. And these people could just be present in the ceremony just to kind of show that they're there. This could be maybe there is an event that is acted out as part of the ceremony. Maybe these figures are taking part in the ceremony, like maybe, for example, the ruler is being crowned by someone that is dressed up to represent Mother Earth or something like that. The next one is marriage. If your ruler was already married, there could be a ceremony aspect that involves their partner to kind of include them in, you know, their expectations, their duties, that sort of a thing. And with this, you'll want to know how important is this partner of theirs? Are they, you know, an equal ruler? Do they have any power of their own? Are they somehow subservient or, in service to the ruler? It could also be something where the ruler has to have a partner, so they are married to someone new, or maybe there's a tradition of, you know, specifically who they would then marry as part of becoming the ruler. So that marriage itself could be part of the ceremony. And then the last one is a rite. And this would be a ceremonial act or display, custom, that symbolizes something important. So this could be displaying their magic, displaying other traits or skills. This could be paying homage to something that happened in the past, or some sort of maybe magical ritual of sorts. Some of the examples in the text were like shooting an arrow or taking a certain number of ceremonial steps. So those are all the elements that I could kind of think of, and the ones that were in that chapter in the text that I referenced earlier. And I just thought it was really cool to kind of look at all these different cultures and people that had so many similar elements in their enthronement ceremonies, even though they were pretty isolated, pretty separate, and a lot of them went back really far. So it kind of gives you that idea of patterns that I really like to play off with my world building. Because if you understand how and why things happened in our own past, you can kind of build off that to kind of create really realistic things in your fantasy worlds. Something to probably keep in mind, and I probably don't even need to say this, it might be personal preference, I don't know. But just because you could add additional elements to show more world building and stuff, readers probably aren't going to want to read like 10,000 words of a coronation or something like that. So you want to make sure that you're not, you know, going over the top or showing too many elements that you're really breaking down that kind of show off the same bits of world building and the same pieces of your society. You want to keep it interesting, keep it moving, and you don't want to have this be really long if it wouldn't make sense in your world anyway. So I would just keep that in mind if you feel like you're going to get really excited and want to just include a ton of these in your, enthronement ceremonies in your books. But if you enjoyed this video, if you want me to do more of them like it, like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to hear if you have a ceremony like this in your world already, or if there's, one that you really like from a book or from a movie or from some other piece of media. It'd be really cool to chat about it in the comments and maybe talk about why they do that in the ceremonies and kind of why it is that way. Yeah, I'll see you next time.